See, we are in the process of going. Oh, Mikey, we're live.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful.
How are you?
Consi- I'm fine. Considering the alternative, it's fabulous to be live.
Yes, I love being live. It's better than being dead, which we'll talk about later. But Michael Knight down here in Pasadena, California, how the hell are you?
We're good. Temperatures in the 50s. We're going to have snow tonight, not here in Pasadena, but on the mountains surrounding it, the San Gabriel Mountains and the Grapevine and all the spots. If you were used to traveling the streets of Southern California, most of the state of California is going to have snow today. And I'm sure you have the same story in Washington.
We have about an inch of it on the ground right now, and it is coming down fast and furious. So
It's
I
snowing
suspect
now.
it's snowing right now, yes. I woke up
Wow.
this morning to a light dusting, and what was a light dusting has now become an inch of snow at least.
And what was the name of our organization? Was it the Self-Engaging Mutes?
Yeah. Well, yeah,
I'm trying to see
self-engaging
how I'm
mutes.
trying to see how that applies to weather, and I can't quite put the two together. But
We have an hour to figure it out. By the way, I'm New York Vinnie. We are Mikey and Vinnie together here every Monday, Wednesday, Friday at
10:10.
10:10 or thereabouts. Somebody sent me a little note saying, you guys always say 10:10 and you're never there at 10:10. It's always 10:12, 10:16, 10:18.
All right,
And I just, a little bit, if you know us, you know that we tell you 10:10. We go up a little later.
maybe.
Sometimes we stop for coffee. Sometimes we go, we have a little conversation among ourselves. We
In
try to,
fact, if you could only hear the conversations we had when we thought we were on the air but weren't, or should have been on the air but haven't been, or will be on the air but aren't.
yes, we save our best stuff for off the air. But I wouldn't say actually. You know what? That's not true. We have some pretty good stuff on the. Is this on the air? I guess there's a conundrum now where people are saying that you can't call this on the air
That's true.
because we're
That part
not
is true.
on the air, but I say we are on wireless. You can get us on your phone. You can get us on your Patuta. You can get us anywhere you want to get us that has an internet connection. So while it's not on the air, maybe we should say we're on the wire.
We're on the. I like the term on the air because it implies that you can get it anywhere, and that's
Yeah,
true. It's not in the air like a radio signal or a television signal, but it's in the air like a streaming signal is.
right. It's but a streaming signal is well, again, you stream it on a wire to a place that puts it on the air.
It starts on land in a hard case and it ends up in the air in its ephemeral state, and it's a self-engaging mute.
Yeah, yeah, self-engaging mute. Yeah, that's our band, man. The self-engaging mutes. Is that PC though? I mean, can we even call ourselves the self-engaging mutes without causing some kind of firestorm in
No,
some area somewhere with somebody
no,
somehow
no.
some way?
No matter what you do, I don't care if you are Mr. Rogers. There will be people who stand against you in the street, screaming in front of your house with signs and a bullhorn.
Unfortunately, I fear that you're right that the reality of the situation is yes, we people are well, as I captioned in the show today, people are strange. People are always are against anything. You can find somebody against anything, and what has happened is the weight of one person has outweighed the weight of everybody else. So if you have one person that's upset about something, well, then you have to stop doing it, or else you run the risk of them putting you on social media and shaming you.
Well, if you
Um,
remember back when the song "People Are Strange" was popular by the Doors, it was a comment on, well, maybe the people that the Doors know are strange. Maybe the people that rock and rollers and professional organ players run into on a regular basis are strange and deserve to be described as strange. All these people are strange. But now, if you want to meet strange people in this day and age, you can just go to a school board meeting,
yeah,
or the people who want to make the library smaller by burning some of the books. Not all of them, of course, but definitely some of them.
some of them, yeah, yeah. There's people that don't want books. There's people that don't want
Well, there's stuff
other
in the
people,
books.
yeah, that don't want you to look at or consider anything different than what they want you to consider.
It's a
And
bit of mind control. You'd think that the book would be the strongest form of mind control because it gives you ideas, and that would be a good thing. But they think no.
no,
Let's let the mind go through its life without getting any ideas. That would be the perfect world for them. No ideas, no ideas at all.
it's as I like to call it, it's Ron DeSantis's America. It's an America where you learn what we teach you, and that's it. And I don't know. I mean, was it like that when we were kids? I never
Did
thought
anyone
so. I
did
thought
anyone
there
ever
was always open ideas.
But did anyone ever say to you, we don't want you to be more aware. We don't want you to be awake. We don't want you to know what's going on in the world. The idea is for you to remain in some sort of a cocoon where you never really get the story. And you're not worried about it because Ron DeSantis says you're safe.
Yeah, no, no, I can't remember anybody ever saying that. Even the strictest people who were, pro American, as they like to say, although I don't believe they're pro American, but back then it was the Hawks and the Doves, and I don't remember anybody saying don't read about the war, don't read about religion, don't read about this. Let me take this book out of the library. Um, well, there's some books. I mean, I
Or the
remember.
idea that it wouldn't be in the library. It'd be gone. It'd be
Well,
burned.
there were some books that you had to be of a certain age to read, because they didn't want you. One of them was Last Exit to Brooklyn,
Yeah.
which contained a ton of curse words in it. And at that, and when you saw something at that age that was a curse word, you equated it that it was okay to say. And so you would, run around the classroom going, well, Johnny said F this guy, and that had to be curtailed. So it wasn't for, it wasn't that they didn't want you to have the idea. It was that they wanted you to say the idea in acceptable language.
Well, George Carlin made a joke of that by naming the words that you can't say, by saying them, and then saying, you can't say these words that I'm saying. And here they are in order.
Right, the
And
seven
that
words
and
you
that
can't say on television.
and
But
that took some of the sting out of it because it became funny instead of questionable.
well, and Lenny Bruce did a bit about words too, and how boy, you could never do that bit today. But Lenny bits Bruce about the N word and calling people this and that and the other thing.
Yeah.
The names, the epic names that you would call people, was meant to show that the names really mean nothing. Now, coming from a Jewish guy in the early 60s, maybe there wasn't a realization that to many people the words do mean something and they
Yeah.
hurt them. They have a power to hurt. Certain words and certain ideas do have a power to hurt. But it doesn't mean you still shouldn't, I don't know, should you ban books about Nazis from the library? Should you ban books? It always seems that we're banning books about liberal ideas. We never see like somebody say you shouldn't have, the writings of George Wallace or Lester Maddox
They didn't
or
write a lot. You have to admit they didn't write a
well,
great deal.
they couldn't write a lot, but nobody says you can't have that stuff in the library. What they're saying is you can't have Soul on Ice by Eldridge Cleaver, or all of these other different books to present a much more radical and different idea of America. Those are the books that they seem to be wanting to ban from libraries. Except there's a book in there about Roberto Clemente.
Yeah, can you believe that?
And they have figured out that they want to ban that book.
Well, you see, they
And
always go too far. The book burners are not satisfied with burning that one book. They're going to look at all the books and review it periodically, and they'll always find another book that has to be burned. And it's Clemente's turn; he's got to go.
right, there's no shortage. And I'm sorry, but Roberto Clemente died in service of people bringing them earthquake supplies to Nicaragua when it was, it wasn't a popular thing. You know, Nicaragua, we forget sometimes that Nicaragua was a country that this country did everything in its power to control for many years.
Oh yeah.
And Clemente was doing nothing but on a goodwill mission with supplies to help these people out, and was killed in a plane crash. And while that
At
doesn't,
the height of his powers.
yeah, right after his 3,000th hit. So uh, it's really hard for me to see what could be written about this guy that would offend anybody. You know, what could be written about Roberto Clemente that would offend people?
Well, was he white?
No, no.
There you
And he
go.
spoke out about being Latin. Matter of fact, he was one of the first players who, when he first came up, he was called Bobby Clemente. And he was one of the first players to ever say, no, my name is Roberto
Yeah.
Clemente, and that's what you'll call me, and that's what you'll put on my baseball card, and that's what you'll put in the program, and that's what you'll put as
In the
my name,
paper.
Roberto,
Yeah.
not Bobby. I'm not Bobby. I'm
Right.
Roberto. He was proud of his heritage, and rightly so. And for Ron DeSantis or the other any of the idiots down there who think that it's a great idea to ban a book about him, to ban really any book. But to ban a book about Roberto Clemente, really, to me, is just, you're just reaching, man. Like you said,
Well,
you're just reaching.
it's not about the book. It's about what's in the book. And there are ideas and concepts and conclusions and stories, and there's inspiration in books, and there's you learn compassion, you learn somebody else's story, you learn another form of life, another way of life, and that is all dangerous in terms of the concept and what it might lead to if you're into controlling thought and education. And that's what DeSantis is doing, and he thinks he can sell it nationwide. Thought control and education control nationwide, going to put the ignorant people in charge of the curriculum, and we're just going to see what happens in the long run. Sounds like it's a pretty good idea. What's the worst thing that could happen? Well, the worst thing that could happen is more people like Ron DeSantis
Yeah.
coming to the fore and becoming your mayor and your senator and your congressman, and that type of thought becoming normal.
And being
burning
validated.
books. Yeah, burning books is a great look. What burning books did. We have a great country. We're a fabulous country. But to keep it that way, Vinny, we got to keep burning books. You don't understand. There's more ideas out there that have to be stamped out.
And anybody who ever ran a campfire knows that there comes a time when you start to run out of wood
Yeah,
and the fire goes down.
and there'll be a
And
time when you run out of books too. But that's a long way off.
well, yeah, that's kind of uh, the idea is that you know, at some point, whose books do you start burning? And then, well, do you burn books that when the Democrats get into the power, do they start to burn books about the? I mean, what are guys like DeSantis? I don't want to say Republicans because I don't believe it's all Republicans, but what are they so afraid of people learning?
Well, first of all, it is the platform for the Republican candidate for presidency. So to say it's not a Republican thing is, I think, off base. It's a damn Republican thing. It is a Republican invention. It's a Republican problem. It's a Republican.
Right, but I don't want to say every Republican thinks like that because there are Republicans that don't think like that. That don't
And what do they
think
get?
we
And
should burn.
what do they get for being in that opposition? They get
Thrown out
outcast
of the
from
party these
There you
days.
go.
Yeah,
There
these
you go.
days, if you're Liz Cheney and you have a different idea, you believe in things like
Oop,
law. If you're,
idea. See, you said it, Vinny. Idea. Damn those ideas.
yeah,
That's what gets us in trouble every time somebody gets an idea.
then you have people. But I still think there's a lot of Republicans out there. Although I think it's a shrinking number. I think the Republicans are becoming much more a party of whack jobs and conspiracy theorists. Um, you know, again, the last presidential election they couldn't present an agenda.
They didn't even want
Couldn't
one.
they
It
couldn't
was
present um, a piece of paper. At least Newt Gingrich had the contract for America, you know, and it said, okay, we want to do this, 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 and this. Do you want that? Vote for us. You don't want that? Well, you know,
but
go take
here's
it
who
their
we
way.
are. But
But
here's
here's
who
who
we
we
are.
are. Here's what we
Yeah,
do.
right.
And here's how we want. Here's our vision of America. These clowns that are running things now, they don't. What's their vision?
Here's an example of what happens when you have a vision, but that's as far as it goes. Donald Trump is on his way to East Palestine, Ohio, to take a look at the area where the great chemical spill and conflagration is going on. That is an area, Vinny, that I found out this morning voted 70% for Donald Trump.
Oh yeah,
So
yeah.
now they're going to get what they voted for. He's going to come to the area. He's going to stand there. He's going to make a speech. He's not going to do anything for them. He's already done things to them that have put them in this position
Is
of
he
believing that Donald Trump is their savior. So the
is he
savior's
going to
coming.
tell them? Yeah, is he going to tell them that it was his rollback of environmental laws that monitored and protected people from putting those chemicals on a train?
70% of them already believe that that's nonsense and that he's a wonderful man that was sent to them, not by Amazon, but by God. And by the way, Amazon delivers faster than God. God sometimes can take years to get something to
Yeah,
you.
yeah, yeah. And you have to pray to God. You don't know if He's hearing the prayers. At least with Amazon, you just click
Amazon, 24 hours.
and you
It's
know it's
there.
coming.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's I yeah, I don't listen. We've said this many times before, and I believe it to be true. It's a cult. It's a bunch of people that he will be able to do no wrong for these people, and they believe it. And what's worse is they have to get on places like social media and stuff like that and espouse their views, even if it has nothing to do with what's what the topic is of the
Right.
post. They have to get in there and put their 2 cents in. I'll tell you a quick story here. I put a post up the other day. You saw it
I
about John
saw it.
Fetterman.
Yeah.
Yeah, the post simply says we stand behind. Let me see if I can even. I'll actually put the post up. Not put it up, but read the post because
It didn't take
it's
30 seconds for it to descend into a discussion about something else entirely.
yeah, it's a very simple and simple post. I mean, it really doesn't. It basically says that I stand behind John Fetterman. Here it is. I stand with Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman in his struggle with depression. As one who is familiar with the disease, I pray he gets the help he needs and the support of his family, friends, and his country. And there's a picture of me on there with a Fetterman T-shirt that I've had since he started running. And so instead of, and listen, I don't say that everybody has to agree with me. I don't, but this is not a political post.
It
This
is
is
to
the
some.
same thing as if I said, one of my friend Billy's mothers is in the hospital, and we pray for her quick recovery. We pray for, that she gets the help she needs, and so on and so forth. Had nothing to do with politics or asking people to vote for Fetterman, but yet, it quickly, as you said, 45 comments later, develops into this prize fight. And the most interesting thing about it, I don't know who this Nate Richards guy is that's on my, I have so many people on these things I don't know who. And I do know the next guy, George was. I agree with both sentiments. He writes, "I hope he gets well. However, just another liberal unfit for office." So the next guy says, "I agree with both sentiments. As a Pennsylvania resident, I don't see how he can be effective at all." And then another friend of mine from out here kind of takes him on about it. Another guy takes him on, and another guy takes him on, and finally I go back at him and I say, "How do you even know people's political affiliations?" And then and then what was interesting is I always go to look at people's timelines to see who they are. Maybe it's just somebody I don't want to. I don't know who they are. So I go on this guy's timeline, and he says, "Oh my, I feel politics is ruining this country. I've just been bullied on a media personality's timeline.
Oh boy,
First of
here
all,
we
if you
go.
think I'm a media personality, you're really weird. So instead of just letting it go, I said, you know what? I'm going to answer this guy back. And I said, listen, Nate, and I just tried to explain to him the post was not political. It had nothing to do with politics. And he answered me back with this nasty, don't try to sell yourself as an angel. You're a liberal. Take your shit somewhere else.
There you go.
So obviously, this guy is an idiot. He's just an idiot. That's all. There's nothing you can do about this guy.
And
You
he's
know, this
trolling
is
you.
right. And this is a guy who's just looking to get a reaction. So I just blocked him. I didn't block him. I unfriended him. I don't need that kind of garbage in my Facebook timeline. Matter of fact, sometimes I start to wonder if I even really need Facebook, to be honest with you, because
Yeah, you do because you need it because you're a media personality.
I'm a media personality. Well, if you're reaching at me as a media personality, you're reaching further than the people that reach for Roberto Clemente's book in the Florida library system.
That was so weird. I guess there must be some secret message in Roberto Clemente's book that we're not aware of. That only the Ron DeSantis group would understand how dangerous it is for Americans to learn about Roberto Clemente.
Yeah, I can't imagine what ideas.
Is it because he was a bad ball hitter? He was a bad ball hitter. That's why he would swing at balls out of the strike zone and hit them.
I just find it so bizarre. I'm just trying to see if I can.
The
Let's
spirit of
see.
Roberto Clemente is with us today because there's balls being thrown and caught. The Giants sent me a video of the sounds of spring, and it's guys playing catch, guys taking batting practice, guys taking infield practice, practicing their footwork and their turns and their action at second base. It was a great video without a word in it, and it was all just baseball. You would have loved it, Ben.
Well, it goes.
Roberto Clemente would have loved it.
Yeah. Well, it goes along with the snow that's coming down.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what Spring training is supposed to make you think that the snow is not coming. Is you feel better about the snow coming down?
Yeah.
The story they're talking about on Roberto's book is they chronicle the racism
Oh no.
that they go through, and that's why they want to ban it, because Roberto Clemente in this book chronicled the racism that he had to go through in spring training in Florida. Now, you got Ron DeSantis. Listen, I remember Florida in the 50s, in the 60s, when black people couldn't come to the front counter of a restaurant and get served, when they had to go around the back and eat off of the chipped china, dishware. I remember that Florida. I was there for that Florida. I remember how black people couldn't, and Spanish, not just black people, they were welcome to pick the oranges and the lemons or the grapefruits, but they weren't welcome to sleep. They had to sleep in their cars. They had to sleep in tents. They had to live like dogs.
A lot of that changed when the Cubans came to town, but strangely enough, the Cubans all became Republicans because of their anti-communist standing, and they evolved on a parallel course to a lot of the people from Latin America who went to school in Miami. There was a lot of people from Latin America around, Venezuela, Panama, all the major countries sent their kids to Miami to get an education. A lot of folks from there, and the welcoming aspect of Miami for the Latin population was obvious. But 20 miles out of Miami, you're not in Miami anymore. You're not in Florida anymore. You're just in a long part of Georgia.
Yeah.
And that's a fact. And I was lucky to be in Miami myself, but we were not a liberal bastion, but a sophisticated, worldly, international city, as opposed to Tallahassee, which is the capital of a very strange state that is welcoming all this racism disguised as purity, and this hatred disguised as concern, and this book burning disguised as education.
Well, I don't know in this day and age how you can teach American history and not talk about what was done to black people in this country, what was done to people of color in this country. If you do, you're not telling the whole story. You know, the
How many words are there about the American Indian in your history book?
yeah, what we learned in fifth, sixth, and seventh grade about Indians and about black people and about the Emancipation Proclamation. You know, if you go by what we learned in sixth or seventh grade about the Emancipation Proclamation, it was a party after Lincoln freed the slave, after he signed the Emancipation Proclamation. Oh, it was, oh, good God, it was fun. All the slaves just started to dance down the street and had a great time because Mr. Lincoln had freed them.
And just like that,
And just like that, everybody accepted them as brothers. They just put their arm around and said, hey, come on in and meet my daughter. No, sorry, it didn't work like that. And if you don't understand that, then you have no way of understanding why we go through what we go through today. It's that simple. It's not blaming anybody. It's just chronicling history. If you're going to teach history, teach it right and let people decide for themselves what's right and wrong.
our latest candidate for presidency, Madam Nikki, described the Civil War as the South fighting for tradition and the North fighting for change. That's what we wanted to do. We looked at the South and said, that has to change. You bet we did.
Yeah.
And you looked at the North and said, under no circumstances are we going to operate our economy without slaves. And that was the footage for the war right there. Plus, the war that began with the South and the North was started by the South, by the tradition lovers who didn't want change.
Who didn't want the financial burden of having to pay their labor.
It
They
was
didn't
just too
want
much.
the financial burden of having to treat their labor equally.
They had a plan, Vinny, and it didn't involve paying anybody. And so, what are they supposed to do? Change their plan? No, not on your life. We're going to war over this one.
Well, it involved paying another white guy for the slave that he bought like a used car. That's what it involved, right? I mean, that's what they did. They brought the slaves over and they sold them, auctioned them off on the docks. Come get yourself here. Here's a good-looking woman and her two children. You'll have a slave for 50 years.
And you can't run your business without them. So just pony up. Let's go. Cash in the barrel head. Let's go.
And you can sell your tobacco crop or your cotton crop and keep all the money. Why pay people?
Except me. You got to pay the slave trader.
Yeah, slaves pay me a couple of hundred, and we'll give you these three, and you own them. And
slaves are not free. This is a business like any other business. And what am I supposed to do? I have costs. I have costs of bringing them here. We got to bring them across the ocean. We got to catch people. We got to catch people. Nobody wants to be a slave, so we have to run them down, put them in chains, put them on the boat. It's labor intensive, so you got to pay.
And you know what? We didn't learn that in school. We learned that because at some point you wanted to know more. You wanted to know why. You wanted to know why things happened the way they did. Why were the black people that were rioting in 1968 in Detroit and Los Angeles and Harlem and Washington, D.C., why were they so angry? The books always told us that after a certain time, we were all friends. But then you found out why there was no black family on the west side of Junction Boulevard and no white family on the east side of Junction Boulevard.
Isn't it always the white people who say, "What's everyone so upset about?
Yeah,
Why are they upset? Not why are we upset? Why is the nation upset? Why is the populace unrest? But why are they upset? What the heck happened to them that's so special? Why are they
yeah. What
so
they should just
angry?"
shut up and get along, right? Just
Exactly.
get along.
That's and we'll get those books out of the library that disturb you so much, and we'll be good. We'll be fine because they kind of disturb us too. We don't think the white people got a good shake on those books. There's descriptions of things that may or may not have happened. Who's to say? It's hard to remember. It was a long time ago. That's all just history. That's water under the bridge. Why bring it up again?
And what kind of person are you that feels that if you don't teach this stuff to people, that it's going to go away? I mean, do you think people, well, I mean, are people, let me rephrase the question. Are people that stupid? Are people in places like Florida stupid enough to believe that everything that's been caused in this country is caused by just these black people, and I don't know why they're upset. Why could they be upset? I mean, up until 1930 or 1940, we were hanging them from trees.
And any tree would do. You didn't need a special tree. It was like the stake in the old villages, in Europe. Every village had a stake because there were people to burn on a regular basis. People that didn't believe what you believed. And that shows us, Vinny, that if everybody in the village is white, pretty soon we start dividing up between those who are extra white and those who are not quite white enough.
Right.
And the ones that don't quite believe what they should believe, even though they're white, you got to burn them too. It's like a book.
Yeah, if you run out of black people, you got to start going after the Jews and the Italians and the olive-skinned people.
It's nature's way. It's what God wanted. It's all according to plan. I'm sure it's in the Bible somewhere. We'll find it later.
Doesn't really matter. All you got to do is tell somebody it's in the Bible because half the people don't look.
And we can burn that one too if you don't like what's in there. Let's burn the Bible.
You can invent your own saint. Saint de Raganats. You can
there you go.
Saint de Raganats and say, well, according to Saint de Raganats, these people or those people or them people are bad.
You see, that's
what that quite easily.
That's what went wrong in Slovakia. They started believing the politicians when they told them who had gone bad, who was the enemy, who was the problem. And the funny thing is, it was never them. It was never themselves. There was never any problem that had to be addressed by them. But somebody else always had to bear the burden of why things were going wrong. Why is the carburetor always breaking down on these Ford Fairlanes? Why, Vinny?
Saint Raganats. It's in the
There
Bible.
You go. It's in the Bible. It's right there.
Right there.
You can read it. You can look it up.
Raganats, chapter 4, verse 10. He who injects a holy carburetor where a Carter should be will one day feel the wrath of Jesus.
And that's some wrath, because you're always going to break down on the 405
exactly.
in commute times.
According to Saint Raganats.
And Saint Raganats, it's a little late to start, devoting your life to Saint Raganats when you're broken down on the 405 at Sunset Boulevard on a Friday afternoon at 4:35 p.m.
Is it really, Michael, or
it's too late?
Can you find Jesus minutes before you die? It's coming.
You know what? You can make an appeal. We'll take it under consideration. But chances are you're on the out looking in. We'll find out, Vinny, because I will be on the outside and you'll be on the inside, and we'll get there together and we'll say it didn't matter what side you were on.
I don't think anybody's gonna know what side anybody's on. I'm starting to get the feeling that this ain't all it's cracked up to be.
Well, when we get to heaven, could we please do middays? I'm sick of the morning show. 10 to 2 is fine with me.
If it's really heaven, it'll be on a second floor overlooking a beautiful intersection, and there'll be all jazz and blues and rock and roll and British Invasion albums up on the walls. And we'll just walk in at 10 o'clock every morning and hang out and play music and talk about the music and everything else until 3 o'clock in the afternoon when Norman Davis comes in to entertain you until 7. When
Hey,
Bobby Dale will be taking you
oh,
through the
Bobby Dale
evening.
at 7. Oh, fantastic. Okay, and I'm going to listen to this radio station. Hey, I have a rock and roll story for you. The
I'm
Rolling
always up for a rock and roll story.
the Rolling Stones are putting together an album of new music, the first one since 2006, and their bass player on a couple of the songs is none other than
David
Paul
Hayes?
McCartney.
Oh, Paul McCartney. I was going for David. I was hoping for David Hayes.
You can still hope, but when McCartney auditioned, he apparently it was a pretty good audition,
So we're
and they kept
finally
him.
going to get the meeting of the
And
Beatles and the Stones, right?
closer than you think, because that's not the last addition to the album. The last addition to the album will be Ringo Starr on drums.
You know what? When Charlie Watts died, I thought that would be um, a beautiful thing. I remember saying this. Wouldn't it be cool if they took Ringo out on tour? You know,
You
that
know,
would
the
be
funny thing
something that
is,
people.
Charlie will appear on the album too. Keith Richards saying, "You haven't heard the last of Charlie Watts. He will. His last recordings, or some of the last recordings, will appear on this new album."
That's awesome. That could you imagine a tour with Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr and the Rolling Stones?
What do you call them? The Rolling Stars,
The Rolling Beatles?
the Quarrymen.
Yeah, Quarrymen Act. Well, uh, the tour that never was.
The All Star Skiffle Band. I don't know. We'll think of something.
Maybe they got to go get Dave Clark, although he's passed away. But somebody from the dead, like, well, who's the guy? Mike Richards.
Mike Smith is gone
Mike
too.
Smith. Oh, he's gone
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
Yeah, maybe they could find somebody from the Dave Clark Five that's still around, and they could do just the Tiger Beat tour.
With Bob Eubanks at the Hollywood Bowl, everybody.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the tour that you've been waiting for since you've been 12 years old. It is the Tiger Beat Tour. Oh, man. Well, that's cool. See,
So
that's...
there's no track listing and there's no songs and there's no release date, but it has been confirmed that McCartney last week or at some time recently came to Los Angeles and put on his bass parts.
I really like the way McCartney is aging, man. I mean, I really like that he does. He goes out, he plays with other people. He played with Springsteen last year. He was playing with Billy Joel at the last Shea Stadium show.
He was at the Super Bowl.
He was at the Super Bowl. Yeah, I mean, I think of all the Beatles, well, Ringo has aged well too. Matter of fact, Ringo actually looks like he did when he was 50. I mean,
Yeah.
But
And he's going out again with the All Star Tour.
yeah, he just he just tours, man. He just goes out and does his thing, and so does McCartney, and they look happy. They're the elder statesmen of rock and roll, along with Mick Jagger and company,
And Keith.
and Keith, and so and Rod Stewart. Those guys, they all just look like they're having a good time. Nobody's just retiring and fading into the woodwork.
I saw a video recently of the late Jeff Beck. He was on stage playing People Get Ready in his own version, which was a guitar instrumental. And Rod Stewart walks on the stage behind him where he doesn't see him and starts singing, People Get Ready. And Jeff Beck just covers his face with his hands because he knows who it is. I mean, who else could it be with that voice?
Well, they did that as a single in the 80s, right?
Yeah. And they sang together in the Jeff Beck group.
Right.
When Ronnie Wood was on bass and Mickey Waller on drums and the great Jeff Beck on guitar that he could make sound like a warthog going through a keyhole.
There's I have, it's funny, I have a Jeff Beck album. Boy, I can't remember the label it's on, but it's a weird kind of deal that he did, like a one-off type of album, and it's just guitar music. It's no singing, no nothing, just guitar. And it's in my record collection. I can't wait to get my hands on it because I want to listen to it. And it was on like a weird label too.
Do you remember the name of the album?
No, I can't even remember the name of the album. It came out around the time we were at the city, so it came out in the '80s, middle '80s. But yeah, it's yeah. I mean, listen, a lot of these guys are that. I mean, you look at their ages. Sometimes you wonder exactly how in the world they survived. How in the world did how has Keith Richards made it to, what is he, 80 or whatever he is now? 80, 79, something like that.
He's
How in the world
yeah.
did these guys make it?
Was it called Flash? Jeff Beck.
Maybe. Maybe that was it. I
Jeff
know
Beck's
the album,
Guitar Shop.
yeah, it didn't sell a lot, and I remember because I got it as a promo copy somehow, and I remember, I listened to it. I go, wow, this is it. It's just kind of interesting.
Well, I can't tell. There's so many records. He had about 5 releases in the '80s. So
Yeah,
you have
yeah,
Jeff Beck's Guitar Shop and a couple others. I'll take a look and see if I can find that one
yeah. I'll have to look to see it
specifically.
too. Um,
But who else would record Nessun Dorma with guitar, bass, and drums? Impossible. It's only somebody that can get the dynamics out of the guitar. He could get it to come with him.
Right. The sad thing was that commercial radio never really latched on to that stuff. That was the kind of stuff that you had to get. If it would never get played today, you had to be a fan of somebody to get to understand, to get it. And I don't know. Did you work at a station that played that?
I've worked at stations that would have played it had it been released at the time that we were on the air. I worked at a couple of those.
Yeah, but I'm talking about '80s, '90s, 2000s. That
No,
that ship had kind of sailed by then. And that's where satellite radio comes in, because you could probably listen to deep tracks on Sirius XM and hear that. I
they
don't know
get
if I've
that
ever
deep.
heard it, but they go pretty deep into stuff. They get into stuff that you haven't heard in a long, long time. Who's it? Is it Earl Bailey that does a lot of it? I think it's Earl Bailey that does a ton of it. And because they have like 900 channels, so they can
Right.
do a deep tracks. And if you don't like it, you just switch over to something else, and then you come back.
Switch over to Superstars.
Yeah, it's not, there's something there for everybody. So they have a '60s oldie station that's really good because they play not just the hit, but
Right.
they go and they grab the B side of some things every once in a while. There's Spice.
And
There's
number
the
27 on the
follow-up
top
record.
30.
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
exactly. They're gonna find things and come up with things that you haven't heard in years. I remember that song, man. They played that like 3 times on WABC, and then it went away. But I
Right.
remember it.
They gave
You
it a
know?
shot.
Yeah, they gave it a shot. They played it a few times. Probably some record guy was up there and said, "Hey, here's a gift certificate for the 21 Club and this new record that needs to be played."
One could happen if the other does happen.
If one happens, the other one will be valid. And we're not saying which way that goes.
Not yet, anyway.
I'm not saying. I'm just saying. By the way, here's 2 tickets to the Beatles show at Shea Stadium.
Mr. Bernstein says, "How you doing?"
He says, "Come on, come backstage and say hello to the boys. Just look out for Murray the K. He's got a big head."
He always did have a big head, and he made it worse by putting on that stupid Russian hat. But what are you going to do? It was,
Murray
it
the
was
K. The 5th Beatle. I wonder if they ever asked him how the Beatles felt about him calling himself the 5th Beatle.
I don't think they took it that seriously. They were just happy to be. I mean, there was no way that Murray was going to be a Beatle, right? He could wear the boots. You remember that PBS series that came out? It was they got a hold of the first shot of Murray with a rock and roll presentation show that had the groups lip syncing, but sort of mixed in with Murray giving them the intro. And it was they did only a couple shows, and he was the man behind it.
A TV show or a
Yes,
live
TV
show?
show.
TV show?
TV show.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because
Remember that?
he had a couple of local things. Yeah.
And one of them really played with the form. And this was so I gave him extra credit for that one because the intros were mixed in with the videos, and the show had its own look.
Yeah. They had I kind of remember that show. There was a fierce competition on between Cousin Brucey, Murray the K, and a guy named Clay Cole, who did a weekly music show for years. Kind of like in L.A., I think his equivalent was Lloyd Daxton.
Yep. We had Lloyd
Uh,
Thuxton in the Bay Area too. We got
yeah,
his show every afternoon.
Lloyd Daxton, the Clay Cole thing was kind of, except Lloyd Daxton was on, I think, every day.
Yeah.
And Clay Cole was only on Saturday night.
And Lloyd Thaxton would do stupid shtick, like he'd sing on his knees, make himself look like a little kid with shoes on his knees, and he would do hokey things. He would that you wouldn't think you could sell it, but somehow he pulled it off.
He was part kid show. I remember Lloyd Daxton.
Yes.
It was almost like
Yes.
you could, if you were a kid, you could watch it, but if you were a teenager, you were still hooked in by
Because of
the
the music.
rock and roll the
Yep.
rock and roll stuff that was going on. And I think he had dancing too, if I'm not mistaken. Lloyd Daxton.
Yes.
Daxton
Yeah,
had-
he did.
It was kind of a mix of, who actually tried to duplicate that. I don't know if you remember a guy named Uncle Floyd, Floyd Vivino, who did a show, the Uncle Floyd Show, out of New Jersey, in the '70s, the middle to late '70s, and he had bands come in and play, and then he also had characters on the show that were more. It was supposed to be a kids show, but
Yeah.
it really was for people who were sitting home after work smoking dope. And I mean, tons of bands in New York were on it. The Ramones, and just a ton of. If you appear at CBGB's, you are probably going to get stuck in a van, taken over to New Jersey to play live on the Uncle Floyd Show on Channel 68.
It's like Big Joe's Polka Party.
Nothing's like Big Joe's Polka Party. There's nothing in the world. God rest Big Joe's soul. There's nothing in the world like Big Joe's Polka Show. If you've never seen Big Joe's Polka Show, do yourself a solid and go on YouTube and find it.
RFD. Do they still have reruns?
I don't know. His daughter was doing this show for a while. I don't even know. I don't get RFD TV, unfortunately. They don't have it on our, which they should up here. I would think they would, but for some reason they don't. And I think that's only on like DirecTV satellite. So,
Yeah, I have it, but I never watch it.
yeah. I still have somewhere. I don't have it here. I have it at my storage locker, which I got to get all that stuff out here. Is my RFD TV hat.
Oh, good swag.
Nice piece of swag, baby. It's I got an official RFD TV hat, and it's one of my prized possessions. I wore it to a car event, and people were offering money for it. I want to buy that hat. I give you $50.
When we go on our national tour, we have to do Molly B's party on RFD channel because she's about 80 years old, and
that's Joe's daughter, isn't it, Molly B?
Really?
I think so. If I'm not mistaken, Molly
Wow.
B is Joe's kid.
I didn't know that.
Or if not, there's some kind of relation there because I remember her being on the polka show too. It's not as good as Big Joe. I'm sorry. Big Joe, obviously Big Joe was a big guy. He was, I forget if he was a plumbing salesman or something like that, who wound up getting a Saturday night program on a local radio station in some small town in Milwaukee or close to Milwaukee somewhere, and turned it into this big polka show that traveled the country. And
Wow.
and when you go back to places like Pennsylvania and Ohio and Indiana, polka is huge back there.
It's a thing. It's a
It's a
cultural
thing.
thing.
And it's
Yeah.
not just old people that go, it's young people that are into it too, that their grandfathers and grandmothers taught it. As a matter of fact, I used to go, I went 2 years to, there was a polka fest at one of the resorts. And the guy that lived across the street from me was really into polka, Mr. Joe. He was an old guy, but he was into polka, and he had us come out with him, and we sat out there, went for the weekend at the polka fest, and it was phenomenal. It was just people dancing and having fun, and you heard every song that oh, the yipsy on the upsy on the yutsi.
Oh, that's one of my favorites. The
Oh, the
Upsy on the
yipsy, the
Ipsy.
yupsy, and the yutsi.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You bet. You betcha.
it was number one on the Polish hit parade for many years.
Yep. And
See,
what I liked about Big Joe was he's sitting there and he wore a collection of vests that were handmade. Someone had cut out like the outline of a deer with flannel and sewed it onto his little vest. and, and you just look at it and say, "My God, Joe, that is a foul looking vest. Get yourself a professional vest." But no,
no, no,
Molly,
no,
Molly
no.
B, and all the old ladies would come every week would cut stuff out and sew it on
wear
his vest.
he probably had the world's largest collection of Kiana shirts.
Yep.
You remember that stuff from the '70s? It looked like silk, but it was, you could
But it
sweat
was
in it.
not silk.
It was not silk, man. And
And after one washing, you're in trouble.
and Joe bought every triple X Kiana shirt he could find. He probably stopped in used clothing stores all up and down routes 80 and 90 and 70. And anytime he went to a town, probably had one of his band guys go out and
You could always send one of the
look for one.
accordion players because you have like 3 or 4. You could always spare one.
Yeah, you can always you can get by without all of the. You can't get by without the organ player.
No,
But the accordion players or the squeeze box players, you can always you can always seem to do without one for a little while.
and you can pick one up later when you go to a town. Looking for an accordion player. Well, half the guys in the bar say I can play.
Yeah, I could play. I would have loved to have played the accordion. It was such a square instrument when I was growing up, but man,
Those big
I,
ones are heavy.
I would have loved to have played the accordion. Now it's kind of like a cool thing, but when we were growing up, not so much. Your mom's making you take accordion lessons.
Well, if you're living in Louisiana, the squeeze box, the
Yeah,
accordion
it's
is
a
part
thing.
is part of all the Cajun song fests.
Yeah,
You
it's a
got to
thing.
have your lead singer plays the accordion
And if you're in New York and you're Italian, I mean, there was a lot of Italian kids that took accordion lessons.
because of Dick Contino, your relative.
Yes, because of Well, I don't know if it was because of Dick Contino, but it was certainly, that the accordion was just a big thing among the Italians. I don't know about the Jews. I don't know if the Jews used the accordion as much as the Italians
They
did.
do in the Klimzer bands.
Yeah. But because I know there was some crossover there. There was some duality there between the Jews and the Italians when it came to the accordion. I just didn't remember exactly.
Well, plus, if you were playing in a band in those days, you had no amplification, so you needed something loud enough to be heard, and an accordion can be loud.
Yeah. Oh
Uh,
yeah.
the
Accordion. You
guitar,
can hear
not
the
so much.
block away.
The mandolin, and the bailaka, they have a high edge to it. They can be heard, but they have to be played like the banjo, like a rhythm instrument.
In Spolpakia, I don't know if you know this, but at the University of Spolpakia, there's an organ grinder class.
Well, first of all, I didn't know Slovakia had a university, so that's brand
It
new.
has one. Of course, you have the University of Spolpakia, and then you have Spolpakia State.
And is
And
Slovakia State eternally in the shadow of the University of?
yeah, unfortunately, it works like that. You have, and they play in a conference where there's no other teams, so it winds up every year that they play an 8 game schedule against each other, all 8 games.
I just heard, and you probably are seeing this in your local media, that the Ohio State University canceled 2 games that they had already previously scheduled
Yeah, one with
scheduled
University of Washington.
with Washington. which is unheard of. I mean, that's the lowest of the low.
And they're paying. I think it's a $500,000 penalty to do that.
So
Now,
they're going to end up pushing on the costs and the profit.
well, here's the thing: how the hell is a college able to pay another school $500,000
It's
to? Um,
big business.
well, see, that's it, and there's where, again, I still have the problem with college sports. Is it's nothing but a pro league. It's on the except that they play in tax-free stadiums.
It's the minor leagues, and they don't even know it.
And um, they've screwed it up. What should have been a pretty simple thing to do, they screwed up beyond all recognition. And I think it's horrible that they get to play in Husky Stadium, and all of those admissions aren't taxed. All of those, all of those, because they play in a state facility that they don't pay any kind of tax on the place. It's nonprofit, but yet they're going to get $500,000 again with all of this money that college sports gets. How come the tuitions don't come down?
Well, if Washington gets paid $500,000, is that for each game? Because there's two games involved.
I forget if it's a home and away, and I forget if it's for both games or just for one.
Should be for one, to be decided later upon, and then Washington gets to reschedule that game. Which
I think they cancel both games.
If they do well to reschedule for that date, I know Ohio's got a team that they want to play, or they wouldn't have canceled. So Washington's going to have to come up with two good games too, and they might come up with a game that turns out to be a better payday in the long run because they've already been paid for it by Ohio.
All right.
Now they get another fee for making a deal with another school.
They can have the Little Sisters of the Poor come in and play them, and they're going to make money on it because
they've got a running game. They've got a running game.
As long as they don't trip over those habits, they're good. Couple of things.
True enough.
I did want to, before we get out of here, got some bad news yesterday that a guy that I worked with in Pittsburgh, a country DJ, but a great guy that had been around in business for a million years, Charlie Mitchell, suddenly passed away of a heart attack. Young guy, younger than me. And Charlie was a great guy, was on Y108 back there. And he was one of those part-timers that had been in the business. You'd done it full-time for 100 years and then decided just to go part-time. And him and I found a mutual love of cars. He was a guy that knew about cars as good as anybody I'd ever seen. He knew, the meat, the cubic inches and the this and the that. And it was really, really a pleasure to talk to. He was, when I got to Pittsburgh and he was there, he was one of the really people who welcomed me and would talk to me and we'd just hang out. And, we had to work Saturdays in Pittsburgh, so he had a shift that came on after my shift. So I'd, stop in there for a little while and talk to him while he was doing his air shift. And great guy, man. Just a real, no ego, no nothing. Just a guy that knew cars and music. And really in life, what more do you really need to know?
You got to have the two. You got to have the two together. You got to have music in the car.
Yeah. I mean, he just a really good ambassador. He knew country music too, by the back of his hand. I mean, we had talks about Patsy Cline and about Porter Wagoner, and I mean all the old country stuff that was around years ago that nobody ever really even thinks about anymore.
Porter Wagoner used to wear Big Joe's vests when he was through with them. He'd wear them on stage.
Yeah, Porter had the Big Joe thing going. So anyway, he passed away a couple of days ago, and I just all sympathy and thoughts to his family. I think he was married to his wife for 28 years or something like that, 30 years, something like that. Just a good, solid guy, man. Kind of guy that we need more of in this world. See, this is what's wrong, Michael. Is all the good people are dying,
There
and
goes Jeff Beck.
all the schmucks are staying, and so we have this imbalance of schmuckery right now.
There, and a good example of that would be Marjorie Taylor Greene, who we haven't mentioned for a couple of days, but she's been listed among the high priestess of schmuckery, and there's nothing, and she takes it as a gift, as some sort of a honor
Yeah,
to be labeled this way, as do her ilk. The ilk of Marjorie Taylor Greene also take pride in their ignorance and the glorification of what's wrong and the chaos that they bring wherever they go and the unrest that they ferment. And for the most part, they fuck up the party, but they never help you clean up anything. And
yeah. It's really
that's the nature of their schmuckery is that they're never there to help, and they were never there to help. They were only there to ferment distrust and unrest.
and people keep voting them. I mean, how the hell did you vote Marjorie Taylor Greene back into or Lauren Boebert? I know Boebert had more of a tough run,
She had a
or
real tough run.
yeah, or any of these idiots. How do you vote people who have your interest not anywhere on their radar screen? How do you vote them back into Congress like that? How do you send those people to Washington when there are probably people who actually want to go to Washington and get something done? And these people get nothing done. The only thing they're about is their own self promotion and aggrandization. That's all. They want to be they want to be on. And the biggest example of that, I don't know if you've seen. Have you seen this woman who was the foreman of the grand jury in Georgia? Here we
Her
are
name
back
is
in Georgia again.
her name is Emily Coles, Kohrs.
Is
Coors.
she nuts?
Yes, she's not quite
She's
right.
she's got a freak. I mean, look at her eyes. One of them's going one way, one of them's going the other
Now,
way.
does this mean that what she says is true and there's going to be indictments, or what she says is untrue and there's not going to be indictments? You can't tell because she thought that Lindsey Graham was interesting and fun.
Well, and on top of that, how in the world do we let a foreman, or how does a foreman of a grand jury? First of all, how did this woman get elected foreman? Number one.
She volunteered and they chose her.
Yeah, it must have been. It must have been. The pickings must have been slim. But be that as it may, I mean, I'm no lawyer here, but hasn't she prejudiced this case beyond? And maybe that's what they're going for. Maybe
That's
that's
what I
what they're
thought.
trying to do.
Actually, because she didn't mention anyone, she didn't violate any particular rules, and regardless of what she said, she's not going to change the outcome of the grand jury, which is finished and the report is written. It's up now only for the district attorney to decide who on that list that she's going to take the trouble to prosecute.
Right, but if they go to prosecute people, how can they get a fair trial?
Do you know any more about the deal than you did 3 days ago? You don't. You
I,
don't know any
I know
names. You
that I
don't know any
suspected
outcome.
because this woman opened her mouth about it. Number one, and number two, if this is the caliber of person that they had on this grand jury,
And they went at this for months, Vinny.
yeah,
For
yeah, this wasn't
months.
something that they did. That they did like met 2 afternoons in January and said, okay, let's look at this stuff. All right, this one, this one, this one, this one, and this one. But just the idea that a foreman of a grand jury would go on, and I mean, it really says a lot about our times. Instead of, having the presence of mind to just keep your mouth shut until it's all over,
Nah,
she
that's
wanted
not
her
going to somewhere.
Instagram moment yesterday. She wanted her social media time yesterday. She wanted to go home last night and see all of herself on every network. And you know what? The media
And this
gave it to her.
and this morning too, as
Yeah,
well. She's all over
yeah.
everything.
The media gave it to her.
In
They
fact,
gave her.
she's on right now. Vinny, I
Yeah.
got to run because to get the phone here a second, but I'll see you for Freaky Friday.
All right, man. See you Friday after Lost Rule in the Creek. Creek don't rise. Peace, love, and Manischewitz, baby.
What a wine.
All right. See you Monday, man. And see all of you, Friday. See all of you Friday as well. It's Mikey and Vinnie right here on Facebook and YouTube and everything else. Thank you for listening to our show today.